Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar, Understanding IPES, Simplifying SPID Consolidation and Number Portability. I'm Teresa Batista, Head of Marketing at RazorFlow, and I'll be the moderator for today's session. I'm very happy to introduce our speakers. John McCannis is a Senior Sales Executive at RazorFlow with over 25 years of experience in business development and sales in technology markets. John previously held leadership roles at TransUnion, CSG International, and Hanghouse Networks. Lisa Marie Maxon is the CEO at 10x People. She has led 10x People since its founding in 2013 and has over 30 years of experience in telecom software and numbering solutions. Lisa was the primary author of the NPAC SMIP interface, the standard that has supported local number portability since 1996. John and Lisa will walk us through what IPES is and why it matters, and how carriers can simplify SPID consolidation and number portability. Before we start, I would like to remind you that the session will be around 30 minutes with 10 minutes for Q&A at the end. Feel free to post any questions anytime throughout the session, and we will answer them at the end. And now, over to you, John.
Thanks, Teresa. Thanks, everybody, for joining. Just wanted to kind of briefly go through our summary agenda for you folks so you kind of know what we'll be talking about. It's going to be more of a conversation between Lisa Marie and myself. You know, as you hear us talking and things like that, and you have any questions, just, you know, post them up in the chat or the Q&A section, like Teresa had mentioned. The first thing we'll talk about is, you know, understanding IPES certification. Technically, what is it? And why people are doing it, and you know, and then the next thing we'll jump into is why do people do it, and what are the key benefits from it. And then once you get that all undertaken as far as setting up your IPES certification and you're fully IP enabled, you should have an ideal ecosystem to operate from then on. And we'll explain why and some of the best practices and key takeaways from that as well. So let me jump into understanding IPES certification. You know, IPES certification in simple terms is being totally IP enabled. But you do have to go through a lot of application process with the FCC and the state local PUC commissions as well. But once you're approved, you know, you will now then own your own phone numbers. And there's a lot of advantages to that. You know, you can manage your number porting. You can add some rich features to your solutions like caller name, branded call display, and other types of things that you can add to your voice solutions. Additionally, you know, when you think about IPES, you know, you get down to what we call a single service provider ID, or SPID, if you will. So if you have a lot of SPIDs that you're managing, you can consolidate those all down into a single SPID, and that helps, you know, simplify your network management, and it facilitates number portability. So when you're thinking about, you know, moving towards IPES or IP enabled totally, you really gain a ton of advantages just by, you know, eliminating, you know, multiple SPIDs that you might have out there. So now I'll pass it on to Lisa Marie about, you know, why people are getting certified.
Thanks, John. Transition away from TDM. It is the topic right now. With all the robocalling and fraud, the FCC is coming out with notifications of proposed rulemaking and trying to accelerate the transition to IP, as they believe it will address a lot of the fraud issues that we're having in the network. So if you're not doing it now, you're going to be doing it soon. So there is that movement away from TDM is going to happen, whether you're ready now or not. You do have the added advantage of, minimizing your footprint, having different hardware in place to, complete calls. You're now SIP enabled. So there's a lot of things. John, you mentioned additional services. There's branded calling out there in the call path and outside of the call path. Once we go all IP, we'll have BCID and branded calling there for us. So did I miss anything, John?
No, good point is like it's going to be a lot easier to scale with less hardware. So, if you're thinking, if you have a growth strategy, M&A strategy, anything along those lines where you're trying to grow your business, just think you can do less with more. So that's a very nice feature by being all IP enabled. And we'll get more into some of the key benefits on this next slide. We'll kind of walk through what our customers we know have experienced, and then we can tell you, how you can future-proof your solutions. Number one, up in the upper top left is improve customer experience. Obviously, the less SPIDs you have, the less things you have to manage on your back end. You're going to have less swivel chair when you're doing your ordering and porting. You're going to have less fallout, less errors, and you're going to have a quicker time to revenue. And from that, obviously, you'll have improved customer experience, which is what we all want.
Yes,
and,
definitely.
And as Lisa Marie said too, you're operating on your own network now, so you're not relying on third party. And when troubles come in, you can troubleshoot them quicker, easier than having to rely on someone else to say, hey, what happened to that number? Why is it not in service? Those types of things, just things you might not think of that you're doing today that you just don't have to do anymore. We mentioned all numbers under a single SPID. That's huge, consolidating all your SPIDs, and then just the management of that afterwards as well. And I mentioned a little bit about simplified scalability, and we're not only saying that, within your own network, but that's also within your customers and everything else that you're doing around the IP services that you're offering.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as you're getting your numbers all under one SPID, it's an opportunity now to clean up your inventory. And if you're, an existing provider, you may be routing other people's networks. You want to know what numbers you have where. Make sure you're not paying for numbers that you're not using. You're not paying for services for numbers that aren't in service. So we want to get, as you're coming in, you'll have all those TNs audited and clean in your inventory management to, kind of streamline that. Makes your life a lot easier when you're in control. So.
Yeah, and it's amazing our customers that, go through like a SPID migration or what we call a consolidation. Like Lisa Marie said, you would imagine you couldn't imagine the percentage of dead telephone numbers you have out there that you're paying for. It's amazing. It's almost like oh my gosh, I can't believe I didn't do this before. So it's something to think about, along the lines of, those added benefits you just can't measure until you actually get into doing it. And it really, really does make a difference.
Yeah, we see numbers provisioned in switches that carriers aren't even aware that they have. So it's really an interesting process to go through that auditing and get those streamlined, get those telephone numbers migrated into that inventory system, and then comparing them against regulatory sources as well. What's in the LURG? What's in the North American Numbering Plan? What do you have across the board? So it is a process that's worthwhile now, and the opportunity as you're going to IPES is even stronger there. And if you still, have numbers off net where you may need numbers from a third party to provide service, if you have a strong numbering system, it can also bring those into inventory and continue to manage those for you if you're not bringing all of them in onto your SPID. So that's a big deal.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, use of third-party numbers and networks, it adds complexity. When you think about your order process and what you're doing day to day. But exactly what Lisa Marie said, you can make that easier on yourselves, by becoming enabled and doing all that, becoming IP enabled and consolidating all those SPIDs.
Mm-hmm. Definitely, definitely. And then you have, the regulatory compliance that you need to manage as well. The reassigned number database. There's a lot of things out there that you need to manage, but you're going to be able to go to the PUCs directly, get the numbers you need. You're going to be able to port with the impact provider, the number portability administration. You have much more control over what's happening with your numbers.
Exactly.
So, yeah, and if you're doing it right in an ecosystem, this is all integrated together. So if you're looking at porting in, you don't want a swivel chair. You want to be connected to your trading partners as you're bringing these numbers in, as you're bringing a customer on board. You want to know where they're coming from, reach out to these trading partners, have it automatically port and provision downstream systems for you without you moving from chair to chair to get that done, system to system. Want that number ported. We want it put in inventory. We want it to have the services that you need on it. We also need to be able to order numbers and bring those in to your inventory system so that you can assign them to customers, knowing that you have the numbers you need and that you're providing the data that needs to be sent to the numbering administrator as well as the state PUCs, because you will have 30-day notices that you need to provide. So you're going to want to have that visibility. Where are my numbers? Where is the utilization? In this LATA, do I need to go get numbers? And make sure you have a warning in time to work with regulators. So there's a lot of moving parts there, John. Did I miss anything there on the pieces that are needed?
Yeah, I mean, and touching on an integrated system, everybody wants it, right? They're all begging for it, looking for it, trying to build to it. But once you get there, one of the key things you mentioned was less fallout, and what less fallout just increases time to get your customers onto your network and your billing. So you have less fallout. That's quicker time to revenue for you. And that's what obviously that is your main goal, but you want your customers happy in that process too. You don't want, delays and all that. So if your system, like, we're talking about here, totally integrated from pre-port all the way to, they're on your network and you're monitoring them on your inventory system, it's a lot. It just makes a lot of difference in your entire customer acquisition process and getting, like I mentioned, quicker time to revenue, which is really, really the beat. And you can also, this is kind of a side plus too, is that you can eliminate some of your IT resources, right? You don't have to have all these outside connections, APIs and everything if you have a totally integrated system, as much as you can from end to end, and being able to control that with not having to, always turn to IT for changes or something like that. So it's just another side benefit you get from having an integrated system.
Well, and we know everybody's trying to do more with less. So those resources,
Right.
you might not be eliminating, you might be putting them towards
Exactly.
other parts of your business where you're feeling the pinch of having the right resources in place.
Yeah.
So, and then as you're putting these in place, we were talking about IT, John, you have to integrate to NAMPA. You have to integrate to get your numbers. You need to be integrated to the impact. You need to update the reassigned number database when numbers disconnect. If you, have an ecosystem that's already got that connectivity in place, that's going to just make your life so much easier.
Exactly. Yeah, and you need that implementation support. It's so key, setting up your trading partners. I've seen sometimes it takes months to set up a trading partner.
Mhm.
Then depending upon the vendor of choice, you could take days. So you need to think about and ask those questions as you're building out your ecosystem. Like you mentioned, Lisa Marie, you have all this connectivity and this setup and the testing that you need to do. It's just something, you kind of need to go through that checklist to say, hey, if I'm thinking about building out this system, I need good implementation support. It's definitely a key in helping you get going quickly.
Yeah, if you have somebody who knows what paperwork needs to be filled out, you can be porting, within a week working with the impact provider. You can have your
Exactly.
inventory up quickly. You want that speed to happen, and you want your customers to onboard quickly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
So that transition, can be painful. Bulk porting can be, take a while. If you have existing SPIDs, you're moving everything over in the ecosystem, you have to handle that carefully. You can work with the impact provider. That can be a slower, more gated process. But if you have a good ecosystem, you have the ability to move the numbers when you want to at this, at the rates you need. Now, granted, we all know, John, that ecosystem on the network routing side, we do need to pace a little bit for them so that we don't overwhelm, so that as people are doing competitive portings, we're not taking down routing and other networks. So, but if you have the right solution, that can be gated. That can happen on your terms when you want it to happen at a rate that's higher than would be traditional for the impact provider to provide in their process. So
yeah, like you always mention, it gives you that end-to-end control at the rate you need. I mean, that is so key. It's nice to, be able to say, hey, I can port, but I'd like to get control over the entire process. I want to monitor it, and I only want to deal with the minute fallout that I get from an integrated system. I don't want to be working every single order, plus my fallout, plus errors, all that other stuff that, you always talk about, that people, they're like, hey, this is kind of my day-to-day job, but it really doesn't have to be. And I like how you always talk about that with customers.
Yeah, and bulk porting is just not about combining SPIDs. It's also when you need to make changes. Maybe you need to make changes to your calling name provider. Maybe you need to make LRN changes. You're doing some network grooming or routing. So having that there, not just at the start, but ongoing, also helps, with your network, and just across the board helps. Makes it simpler. Simplified.
Makes it simple, yeah.
You need. That's the key word.
Yeah. And then it lends right into future proofing. So when you think about everything that you set up and the way you're going, now you can future proof, your ordering and your processes, but you can support M&A a lot easier. M&A, it's bulk porting, it's migrations, everything that you need to do, but you have the system set up to do it. So think about that. Think about network growth, as well. Easier to grow your network if it's all consolidated under one SPID and your systems are fully integrated. Subscriber growth. One of the big things we're going to, our key takeaways from this is going to be about subscriber growth and quick subscriber growth. And then continual investment in features, so you're setting yourself up to say, hey, I'm going to be able to offer my customers feature-rich services quicker than I was before. And then also regulatory compliance, it's something you hit on a lot, is regulatory compliance, that folks need to also consider when they're doing this.
Right. There's just constant focus on, fraud. Are you in the robocall mitigation database? Are you taking the right steps? Are you getting to be all IP enabled? Can we get end-to-end attestation for calls so we know who's calling? Your customer is known, and their call is getting delivered on the other end with high confidence that they are who they say they are, both inbound and outbound. So there's a lot of information there. And then, making sure you have number intelligence is so key. Just knowing, sometimes you're doing a 10 DLC campaign, you're doing a texting campaign, knowing who the underlying providers are. Your customer wants to do those campaigns, knowing who it is. Is it T-Mobile? Are they on Verizon? Can we set up that campaign properly for our customers to enable them to do that and deliver with confidence, deliver that campaign with confidence? Knowing where your numbers are, where they're routing from. There's just a lot of information. Where is the customer you acquiring? What network are they on? Sometimes someone will say, oh, I'm with XYZ, and they're not. And you find out they're not. But if you go pull the data and you have good data sources, you will know what network they're on, who to reach out to get that porting done. Yeah, and you want to know how many customers you have routing on an LRN. You want to look at your blocks and codes that you're acquiring. Maybe you're looking to get a number in a specific area code. You can look and see what blocks are available for you to acquire from NAMPA. So you need just varied reporting, and then reporting that also combines not just industry data. It combines industry data like the LERG and NAMPA data, but also combines in with your data, your inventory data, your porting data. So you have a one source for reporting and intelligence. We want you to have the numbers you need, know where your numbers are, and know where you're getting them from. So that's really important. Yeah.
Another thing that we always hit on too is, not only reporting but automated reporting. So your solution, your integrated solution is being proactive for you. So that's another thing you need to think about when you're setting up a totally integrated solution. And then you also always talk about ongoing auditing, not only yours but third party. Ask your vendors, say, hey, I need to make sure, I monitor and audit my own network, my own telephone numbers, everything that I have out there, but also third party, because you still may have some off net, things that you're doing that you need to audit that third party inventory or telephone numbers or what have you. So think about that too. So when you have an integrated solution, it's not just, hey, is it touching my stuff, but is it touching the stuff that's off my network that I still need to control? A lot of people forget about that. And that's something, you bring to the table as well. It's that thing that we always talk about, that 360 view of the customer journey. It truly is. It's not just made up words and, and terms and things, but you get that true, like you always say, the end-to-end process and the total view of it, from the monitoring, the auditing, the automatic reporting, and those types of things that you should think about, for your future.
Right. And having those APIs out to those third parties implemented for you. You had mentioned IT. Again, you don't need IT. The ecosystem should already know how to reach out to those third-party network providers for that auditing and for number acquisition to get you the information you need there as well. It's really important.
Exactly.
And you mentioned proactive too. Proactive, you have to do your numbering, resource and utilization, and forecasting reporting to NAMPA. That is, if you can get that automated and you have it automated in your solution, that's just generated for you. That's a very time-consuming process to do it manually, very time-consuming. So if you can have that just generated and ready to go to submit, a quick review, hit a button, it's done, twice a year. I don't have to think about it. I don't have to think about updating the reassigned number database monthly. Your inventory system is tracking it and then just already has integrated with that API, integrated to NPAC, integrated to NAMPA, just simplifies everything.
Yeah,
So much.
like you run into no more Excel spreadsheets, folks.
Yes, yes. It may be under the covers going to Excel somewhere, but you're not the one opening and editing them. So I think that's a big bonus. That's a bonus there.
And you mentioned the APIs too, but you got to think of the to and from too. So like, think about your integrated system in this sense, that like, you're just rolling along day to day. How do you know who's porting away from you? It's nice to know that, your inventory system has that capability to say, hey, we've experienced a port out. It updates your OMS, your back office, your inventory system. So you're not saying, oh gosh, I've got this TN out here that I don't even know is mine anymore. But remember, folks, if it's totally integrated, these are things you don't have to worry about anymore. Those dead TNs that you're out there that you think you own, but you do not.
And you can have that view of who am I losing to who am I gaining from. Those are, all insights that you need and need to understand to grow your business as well. So,
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we're going to wrap it up here with some, just kind of the best practices and key takeaways, the most important thing Lisa Marie wanted to kind of tell everybody is that, becoming IPES certified, having a totally integrated back office solution, gains you the ability to win your new customers and grow your business quicker and more efficiently. That's kind of our big takeaway, right? That we're trying to tell folks here.
Yeah, because there's a lot to think about. I know we've mentioned a lot of pieces. Some of the folks that may be moving from TDM to IPES have some of these things in place. Are they automated to the level to keep it simple? And then the newer guys coming in, we want to make sure that you have trusted experts, folks that can move you through the process, get you what you need so that you can be successful winning customers quick to revenue, as John keeps mentioning. It's really important to have that in place.
Yeah. Okay, so Teresa, we'll now move on, to the Q&A session. If there's any questions that folks had, we can answer.
Yes, thank you, John. Thank you, Lisa Marie. This was a very interesting discussion. Let's see if we have some questions. First question, when a number is ported away from a carrier, is there automation that will update the losing carrier's inventory status of that number?
Yes, depending on your ecosystem, but certainly as those numbers are ported, up front, you have that communication of, I'm porting to and from in the pre-port process and in the porting with the impact. Once it actually gets ported, if you have a good integrated ecosystem, it should be removed from inventory, marked as ported out, so you can appropriately report on that in the future. So it should be taken care of for you.
Another question, are there better days in the week or time of month than others to process bulk porting projects?
Yeah, bulk porting projects, it depends on how big they are. Most of them can be handled during the day or overnight, with the exception of the maintenance windows that happen for the impact for the number portability administration system on the weekends. If you're doing large porting, we do want to reach out to the impact provider and kind of just double check. Is anybody else out there doing bulk porting? Do we need to be mindful of certain times or days? But you're in control, and you can keep that pace of your bulk porting to a level that won't impact the ecosystem, so that you have that control.
Yeah, in general, don't we tell folks to kind of stay away from like a weekend Friday, because when you think about it, if there's any fallout, you need to manage that. But will you have the resources on board over the weekend? And will the other carriers or NPAC, will they have the resources to support you as well? So just in general, we like to stay away from Fridays, if you will. But otherwise, like Lisa Marie said, if you do all those checkpoints beforehand, you should be fine.
Yeah, Fridays and Sundays. And then
yeah, exactly.
Sure. Fridays and Sundays.
Yeah.
Any other questions? No one? We have one last question. Do all trading partners adhere to the same rules when it comes to number of hours, days that they will release numbers for porting out?
I'll let you take that one, John.
Do trading partners? Yeah, I mean, I would say it depends on their solution, right, Lisa Marie? If they have a good solution, a lot of stuff is already automated. So, days, hours are always adhered to. but you're going to get those carriers that have, oh, email us or, call us, what have you, or fill something out on our portal. And that takes time because, their portals may not always be up and running. They might have issues on their back end. So yeah, each trading partner could be different. And that's something you need to think about in your solution. But if you have, like we've been talking about, this integrated solution and it's popping up warning and alerts to you that, hey, I've looked out to this one carrier to port and I'm getting no response. So think about, again, your ecosystem and how it can protect you from, their delays, if you will, in the porting process. So yeah, it does happen. But there's ways you can, not only, maybe not eliminate it, but reduce the time as well.
Well, John, remember, I'm going to date myself, but remember when we used to fax pre-port and then we would try to use OCR to decode those. So I think fax is gone now. I'm pretty sure, but yeah, in the old days, that could be a problem. Did your fax machine have enough ink when it printed? So.
Yeah. Now it's, I didn't get that email kind of thing.
Right. It went to spam.
It went to spam. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't think we have any more questions. Let me just check again. No, I think that's it. I would like to thank Lisa Marie and John. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, everyone who joined us today. Have a great day, and I hope to see you at the next webinar soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.